Hi, and welcome to this catch-up. We're live in vForum in Sydney, while we get around a bit. I was at VMworld in Barcelona about 3 days ago, so now we're in vForum in Sydney. And yeah, I've got a really special guest that I'm speaking today. So if you could introduce yourself, special guest, that would be great.
Special guest, sure. So I'm Martin Casado. I was the co-founder of Nicira Networks, which was a company in the SDN space. We did network virtualization. We were acquired by VMware last year, and now I'm Chief Technology Officer of Networking for VMware.
Wow, that's a long title there. That's good, yeah. Jack of all trades, eh?
Yeah,
man of many talents, yeah.
Cool. I don't know about that.
So look, Martin, we're at vForum, and
yes.
I had a quick chat with you before, and you did say that this is your first time in Sydney, first time in Australia as well.
It's my first time in Australia.
So what do you think about? Have you been to a vForum event before, other than like?
I have been in Japan. I've never.
Right, okay.
So I've been to vForums in Japan. I've been to a number of the VMworld events. I've spoken at many of them.
Right.
And what's actually interesting about this is it really feels like a VMworld. I mean, like the level of excitement, the number of customers, the number of people. I mean, it really has that type of a feeling.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. That's interesting. Yeah. Like often said before, I've had conversations with other people about why we wouldn't have a VMworld in the APAC region, but I guess the problem with that would be is that it wouldn't be in Sydney. It'd probably be in Singapore or something like that. So we probably wouldn't see it. So, but so the vForum, I think there's about 5,500 people here, somewhere around there.
I think they were saying 6,500.
Yeah, 6,500. There you go. So I was at Barcelona saying the other day, and it was 8,500.
Yeah,
so it's not really a lot of difference.
No, it's roughly the same. It's very close.
Yeah.
It's very surprising.
So, and any takeaways for Sydney for you? Coffee, good coffee, maybe? Or?
The coffee was fantastic.
Yeah.
Actually, the takeaway on the technical side is every meeting I've had, I've been incredibly impressed with the level of depth technically that folks have. So this seems to be like a very technically advanced group. And I actually wasn't surprising that at this level. So.
That's great to hear. Yeah. I think there's some statistics saying that ANZ region is the most virtualized region in the world, sort of thing. And the Dutch, I think, are in there as well. I think they're pretty virtualized as well. So so that's great. Yeah, that's really good to hear. Yeah. So look, I've got about 5 or 6 questions. We've gone through and talked about vForum, but I wanted to ask you about the VMware user group, and I was just interested to know if you've ever been involved in any user groups, not necessarily the VMware user group, but whether you'd be interested in making any kind of commitment in representing the VMware at all in VMware and in Nicira as well. So.
I would love to, actually. I would love to get involved and learn more about it. And very honestly, in the past, I've been a developer, so I have participated in open source projects. I've participated, for example, in things like OpenStack. But I'd be much more interested, these days, especially since I'm doing a lot of customer involvement, to understand more about user use cases. So I would love to get more involved if possible.
Yeah, a really big thing about is that face-to-face interaction. I think working in IT these days, we tend to we've got social media, we've got email, we've got all these tools, but it's really down to that face-to-face
and just understanding how people use the technology. Like one thing is building technology, but why do we do it? The reason we build it is for people to use it. So at the end of the day, it really is about users. And I would love to have more exposure to that.
Excellent. Yeah, okay. So hopefully we'll see 1 or 2 commitments coming up in the next 12, 18 months. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, that's
hopefully
really
less than 12, 18 months.
Yeah, give you a bit of time frame to work.
I appreciate that.
These things take time to work. So yeah, cool. Okay, yeah. Look, so next question then. I was really interested in talking to you more about your move to VMware. Because it's recently that VMware acquired Nicira and stuff. So I was interested to know specifically about what it's been like for you moving from a startup, like a relatively small organization, into a company like VMware, and what the challenge is, and how it's been for you as a transition.
Yeah, sure. So macro point has been phenomenal. I love it. I love being at VMware. I think that startups have their place in the ecosystem, and that is to do kind of really disruptive, high-risk stuff that maybe not makes so much sense to do within a larger organization. And that's what we did at Nicira. That if you're going to bring technology, have a high impact, bring it to a lot of customers, you have to have a large organization to do it. You have to have a sales force, you have to have the channels. And so, with network virtualization, we're at that point where we're ready to bring this to everybody. And you have to do it in a large organization. So my experience has been fantastic. I love the executive team. I love the sales team. I love the engineering team. And I'm looking forward to continuing the engagement for quite some time.
And it's been, it's been an interesting time, particularly in the last couple of months with NSX being announced and that actually being released as
Super
a product.
exciting.
So
Super
I mean, for you, it must be pretty amazing to see this, this child that you've given birth to, and watching it grow and become like a toddler and maybe a young adult sort of thing.
Yeah, hopefully not a teenager.
I did say so. No, we'll pass that phase.
Right.
We'll go straight into
adult.
Directly
to young.
That's good. Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah. So like software-defined networking. We're talking about. I've been saying I've done a few of these vCatchup. I've been saying how big it is. I've been talking to people like Scott Lowe and Brad Headland talking about how the technology is going to change. But what it's a big investment for VMware to make, so heavily in this area. How do you think software-defined network is going to change IT, and how is it going to change how we architect and how we actually build IT?
So I think that So what is the broad dream? What is the macro dream? The macro dream is functionality for infrastructure is in software, so you have all the programmability, all of the agility of software, and you bring that to bear. And I mean, how do we actually think of IT? We don't really think about it just as compute anymore. We think about it as these big buildings which are data centers, which are really the equivalent of computers today. They've got compute, they've got networking and storage. And we want them to be repurposable, to house workloads. I mean, the data center is kind of the center of the IT universe today. And if we want to get to that cloud dream, that software-defined data center dream, that flexibility dream, you have to virtualize the network. So to me, independently, intellectually, and academically, it's a very interesting area. There's some very interesting problems there. But the broader strategic movement here is getting all of IT towards the software-defined data center vision. And until we virtualize the network, we won't get there. And so I get excited on many levels about this.
I mean, we've seen it already with like server virtualization and virtualizing the compute and abstracting hardware from software, and we're seeing further developments in that field. Again with the storage side, but I don't know, like networking's kind of been this, and I'm going to get killed for saying this, but it's kind of been this dinosaur that hasn't really moved, it hasn't changed very much in the last 20 years. So I don't know, as yourself being a pioneer and doing something like this, like encapsulating software, taking those like principles, and like I know you're involved in the is it OpenFlow, the open switch?
So OpenFlow, Open vSwitch,
So I mean, when you were like involved in like developing those and contributing towards those projects, did you see like the bigger opportunity that was being made from it? Or?
Well, I didn't. I certainly didn't know the level of impact. So I wrote the first version of the OpenFlow spec, maybe in 2007, and Open vSwitch was developed under Nicira, so we created that at Nicira. And I mean, when we originally started down all of this, which is, if you look at networking, it's always been very far removed from compute when it came to things like programmability, software evolvability. And like, I'm a software guy. I love applying software to problems because then the power is in my hands. And there was never a model for doing that for networking. Networking, basically, what you bought is what you got, and you could kind of twist some knobs, but there's no programming model. So all of the work I did at Stanford and then later on Nicira was to make networks programmable and have that flexibility. And then now it's become this kind of almost an industry actually, which is really exciting.
It must be quite a proud achievement for yourself to see like how it's flourished and grown.
My name gets bandied around a lot, but honestly, there were so many people that have been involved, that have been so influential to any of this.
It's a community, isn't it? Ultimately, like any development.
Exactly. And so I'm very proud of the people that have been involved, and I've been very close to many of them. And this has been a group effort, but it's been really impressive to see it happen. So.
Well, that's good, It's interesting to hear. So, look, next question there was, I usually ask people about their home lab. I mean, it's probably going to be interesting for yourself, but, how do you get your hands on the tools? What kind of, like, equipment, what kind of setup do you have to do that?
So I'm a software guy. I actually think the less stuff you have, the better.
So just a laptop then, is it?
Laptop, laptop. Love working in the cloud. Most of the work that I did when I was building the early systems, whether when I was a PhD student or whatever, was building software. Every once in a while I had to buy servers because I needed more capacity to emulate things. But one thing that's exciting about software-defined networking is we can do so much in software without having to set up custom apps and having to buy hardware. So I'm very much a fan of the software model.
Cool. Okay. And what about, like, I mean, just to try and fill out the idea, what about what tools you use on a daily basis then to, for your work? I mean, like, I don't know, are you an Apple guy? Are you an Android guy? Or what kind of...
So I'm profoundly non-religious about
technology.
So, Traditionally, I did most of my development on Linux. My favorite editor, my favorite editor was Vim. Actually, I was pretty religious about Vim. Languages I used C++ a lot and Python a lot. These days, I don't do nearly as much development, so most of what I do is PowerPoint or Microsoft Word. So I still use a lot of Vim. As far as I have a Mac laptop, I've got a Mac phone, I've got an Apple TV, but again, not for any ideological reasons. It's just like fairly simple.
It does the right job, sort of thing.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, I was trying to get something out of it, but we
unfortunately,
see how we go.
Whatever.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's good
all
to be flexible. It's good that you're not religious to a specific vendor and stuff. So that's good. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Okay. Yeah. So look, last question. Yeah. Like I did a bit of research just to try and get a better understanding of like what you've done in your past and stuff. I noticed that you're still involved in Stanford. And how important has the university been for you? Yeah?
I mean, Stanford was so important for cultivating these ideas. I mean, a lot of the original ideas came when I was working with the intelligence agencies, actually. But only at Stanford provided the environment for me to work with, like, the founder of VMware, Mendel Rosenblum, who's a professor. So I worked with him. I worked with all these very talented students, and we got to do this great work. And so for me, it was like maybe not the genesis of the ideas, but without it being there, we never would have cultivated them, and it would never been of a launching point to doing things like Nazira and having this bigger movement. So it's been very important. I continue to be a consulting professor there, so a consulting assistant professor. I try and help teach a course there. I advise students, and I think it's a very great place to be, and I feel very honored to be part of it.
Do you feel then that you're like giving back for the good work that was
I try.
The tools and facilities that were given to you, and
absolutely. I try. Actually, I have a lot of loyalty to Stanford because it was such a great environment for us to do this. I mean, it's not very often that a school. Well, I mean, this is what universities are for, but Stanford in particular not only allowed me to develop the technology, but to interface with the rest of industry in a very practical way, and then take it out of the university and create a company. I was just fantastic about that.
Cool. It's interesting stuff. Yeah. I mean, what do you think are the key criteria for innovation? Then, is there any like from your experience? What do you think are the some of the? I mean, I'm asking for some ideas on like how do we innovate? What kind of from your experience, what kind of stuff has been key components for you to be able to do something and make something unique?
So my one piece of advice for people that are interested in kind of impacting technology is solve problems. I think a lot of times we really get caught up for technology's sake. And so, I mean, certainly everything I've done is like I've noticed a problem. I said, okay, I'm not going to have any idea about how you solve it. I just want to solve it. And once you solve it, you'll realize that you've solved the technical problem, but there's still this huge hurdle to bring that problem to customers and actually really understanding that. So be problem focused and then be customer focused, and then the technology will follow. It'll follow. And honestly, if it doesn't require innovation to create the technology, that's good. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it's done. But if it doesn't, and you can use existing techniques, that's good. Right.
Cool. That's great. Yeah. Thanks, Martin. I really appreciate you.
Thanks so much. That's good.
Thanks very much.